Good morning, Marijuana Nation. It's Friday, May 12th, 2017, and you're tuned into episode 245 of Marijuana Today Daily. I'm your host, Shay Gunther, and I'll be walking you through today's marijuana news and headlines. As always, we have a full and busy day of cannabis news in our hands, so let's jump right into it. Our top story of the day is a memo issued by U.S. Attorney General Jeff Sessions on Wednesday that instructed federal prosecutors to ramp up their efforts against defendants charged with drug crimes, specifically by pursuing every possible chargeable offense against a defendant with the goal of getting as much time behind bars as possible for each. Attorney General Sessions, who's currently in a bit of hot water himself for that whole collusion with the Russians thing, goes further in rescinding an Obama-era policy that applied mandatory minimum sentences only for, quote, serious, high-level, or violent drug traffickers, unquote. Now, under Attorney General Sessions, mandatory minimum sentences will be applied everywhere they possibly can be, including low-level users and dealers. This marks a serious escalation in the federal war on drugs and will directly translate to a lot of good people being put in jail for far too long. The New Hampshire State Senate voted yesterday to pass a bill decriminalizing the possession of small amounts of marijuana. Since the state house has already done the same, the measure, House Bill 640, which removes criminal penalties for folks caught with 3/4 of an ounce of marijuana or less, now heads to the desk of Governor Chris Sununu, who said via Twitter that he looks forward to signing it. As Tom Angel over at Massroots is reporting, New Hampshire is the last state in New England with criminal penalties on its books for marijuana. Now that Vermont appears to be on its way to passing adult use legalization via the legislative process, and neighbors Maine and Massachusetts have done it via ballot initiative, it likely won't be too long before the granite state succumbs to the pressures of progressive marijuana policy and further loosens up its laws. Congratulations to everyone in New Hampshire for making this one happen. Our final top story of the day brings us out to Colorado, where yesterday a set of proposed rules governing how Denver's social use program will operate were released by the city's licensing office. Regular listeners know that Denver will be the first municipality in the country to allow businesses to open up adult use marijuana consumption-friendly spaces for customers, although Maine voters also explicitly allowed for social use clubs in last November's adult use ballot initiative here, but the state has still yet to actually implement a working model. Approved and compliant Denver businesses will need the sign-off of their local neighborhood association or business improvement board and will have to train their staff to properly deal with both marijuana users and products, as well as install proper ventilation if vaping is to be allowed indoors. One of the more onerous of the proposed rules is the one that would require businesses to get signed waivers from every customer who walks in the door, every day they do so. Swing over to the Denver Post for the full read on this one. As always, we have all the news we cover linked to on our website at mjtodaydaily.com and on our Twitter account at mjtodaydaily. Those are our top stories for today. It's time for Marijuana Today Daily Headlines Blitz. Before we blitz out on headlines, let's quickly talk about our annual listener survey, which, if you tuned in yesterday, you know that we're just about done with wrapping up for the year. And as I promised yesterday, if we hit our target number of responses, I was going to throw an ice cream party here in Portland for all 20,000 or so members of Marijuana Nation. I even got dinosaur stickers. And yet, no one showed up this morning at 5 a.m. for the party. Now I have a lot of ice cream in the freezer, 40,000 napkins, and a mountain of dinosaur stickers. I guess I'll just set them aside for next year's annual listener survey. Anyway, thanks to everyone who took the time to take this year's survey, and to those of you who will click over today for one last flurry of responses. It really is one of the more powerful ways that you can help Marijuana Today Daily survive and thrive. If you haven't yet and would like to add your voice, swing over to mjtodaydaily.com/survey. Here's the last mention of this URL for the year. You ready for it? mjtodaydaily.com/survey. Go take it. All right, time for the blitz. The Huffington Post has an important story up about a police officer in Atlanta, Georgia, who pulled over and then arrested 23-year-old Caitlin Ebner after she got off from her shift working as a waitress. The officer, Tracy Carroll, subjected Ms. Ebner to almost 30 minutes of field testing, after which time he declared that she had been smoking marijuana and was under arrest. This judgment was made without any kind of objective test and was justified by Officer Carroll as the results of his training as a so-called drug recognition expert, a dressed-up certification used by police officers to back up their subjective decisions made during arrests. Because of the arrest made by Officer Carroll, Ms. Ebner spent that night in jail and lost her ability to serve alcohol at work. Her name wouldn't be cleared up for 4 more months as a blood and urine test came back negative for THC metabolites. This is an important one to click over and read. Sunshine State News is reporting that Florida licensed medical marijuana provider Trulieve is now providing cannabis as whole buds. Previously, the company had packaged their marijuana flower up in a ground-up form to make it easy to vaporize, which is allowed by state law. It did not, however, sell marijuana flower in an intact bud form, as smoking marijuana is not allowed under Florida law. The Trulieve whole bud product was first made available for sale to Florida patients earlier this week. Yesterday, the Pennsylvania Department of Health released the application for medical marijuana testing laboratories under its nascent medical marijuana program. Swing over to Marijuana Industry News for a link to that. Turning our sights up to my corner of the country up here in Maine, the Portland Press-Herald has a good piece up about the relatively slow rise in business seen in the state's medical marijuana dispensaries, of which there are 8, while the state's thousands of caregivers seem to be experiencing a boom in business, though their sales numbers are a little harder to track. According to the Herald's analysis, dispensary business rose just 5.3% last year to $24.8 million, compared to annual growth rates of 40% and 46% in 2014 and 2015. This is another good one to click over and read for the full dive in. Philadelphia Mayor Jim Kenney said during a radio interview yesterday that he thought his state should legalize adult use marijuana and make it available for sale in state-run liquor stores. President Trump has formally released the names of some of his picks for a commission he's forming to tackle the issue of drug addiction, and as you might expect, the names aren't great, at least if you're interested in the crafting of good evidence-based public policy. Marijuana.com has a good piece up with some of the past marijuana statements made by members of Trump's new committee, which include disgraced New Jersey Governor Chris Christie, whose past misstatements on marijuana are widely documented and who will chair the new commission, former U.S. Representative Patrick Kennedy, who is a founder of the prohibitionist group Smarter Approaches to Marijuana, and Bertha Madras, a professor of psychobiology at the Harvard Medical School, who I reported on last month for her refusal to even believe that medical marijuana was real. And finally for today, the Nevada State Senate voted yesterday to approve Assembly Bill 135, which I reported on earlier for its removal of urine tests from the list of ways police can show that a driver is too intoxicated from marijuana to drive. If signed into law by Governor Brian Sandoval, police officers would only be able to use blood tests to show how intoxicated a person is on marijuana, even if that method doesn't actually work either. Those are the headlines and news for the day. I'll be back with you again Monday morning with another information-packed episode of Marijuana Today Daily. But in the meantime, if you have any stories to share or feedback to give, zip us an email to headlines@mjtodaydaily.com. And while you're clicking around the interwebs, swing over to our Twitter account at mjtodaydaily and visit our website at mjtodaydaily.com to find links to all the news we cover. Why was the big cat disqualified from the kitty race? Because it was a cheetah. Thanks to our sponsor, our annual listeners survey, and to all of our awesome patron listeners for the support that makes this show possible. To join the illustrious ranks of the patron listeners yourself, swing over to our website at mjtodaydaily.com and click on that big blue button at the top of the page that says Become a Patron. I'm your host, Shay Gunther. Thanks for tuning in and starting your day with Marijuana Today.
One take, Shay. One take.